Congratulations. Thank you and heartiest congratulations, Madam Lakshmi Puri ji. And now Lakshmi and Vikas will be in conversation on the book.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this fabulous session with Ambassador Lakshmi Puri. I have just been told that there are 18 Indian Foreign Service officers floating around the Jaipur Literature Festival. But she is the only woman who's launching her book. Now, this book has been described as an epic feat of storytelling and remembering, but I think it is much more than that. It is really a coming-of-age saga set against the backdrop of the tumultuous changes taking place in the 5 decades of the 20th century in India. So my very first question to you, Ambassador Puri, is, what was it about this period that compelled you to write an entire novel around it?
Thank you, Vikas. As you know, I am a student of history. And I believe that history is the prophet of the future. And I have been fascinated by this period because I somehow feel that it reverberates with our present and is and has the potential of shaping our destiny, particularly at this time in India, when there is almost the same kind of resurgence, a civilizational resurgence, a cultural resurgence, and also a new kind of reimagining of individuals, society, youth, women and girls, and also our entire worldview. So I felt that a book like this, which is set against the epic struggle for independence of India, should be about also making as much music with the present and what we are aiming for, the ambition that we have. So that is the reason, but also my parents. I was born when they were 45, and I was a post-independent child, but they represented that wonderful period of tumultuous but wonderful period of struggle, which they participated in, the freedom struggle. They also represented the societal upheaval that was happening, the relations between, the man-woman relationships were also changing, education was changing many things, and also the freedom movement was bringing people together like never before, and the stories they told. And this was also the time of, this is also the period where you have 2 world wars, and the impact of that was also significant. So, and then they were such wonderful storytellers that I never felt as if I didn't live in that period. So I could tell the story as if I am in that period, and I have lived through it.
So take us through the process of bringing this novel into the world. When did you begin it, and how long did it take?
Well, I began this novel when I was ambassador in Budapest some 22 years ago. And I wrote 100 pages, but my conception at that time was to have a 3-generational novel. My mother's generation, my and my daughter Himani's generation, but also in terms of the locales and the experiences that 3 generations of women have. But it seemed a very daunting task to do that. And I just stopped after 100 pages. And then I resumed it after all these years when I retired from my UN vocation in New York and came back. And one of the things that really perhaps helped was COVID. And I said, if I don't write it now, I may not live to write it. Because we were going through a period where every morning we were getting up and saying, will we survive this day? And when I finished the novel, it was 270,000 words. Wow. And when I finished it, I told my husband, Hardeep, that now I can die in peace because this is really a labor of love. And this is something I always wanted to write for decades. And it had finally happened.
So it's taken 22 years and a virus to swallow the sun. But let's talk about this title. You know, swallowing the sun is very evocative. What made you choose this particular title and how does it relate to, you know, what happens in the novel?
So the title is taken from the very evocative abhang of a woman saint, Muktabai. Her brother, Sant Jnaneshwar, is well known, but she is not as well known, at least not outside Maharashtra. And I wanted to use this novel, this abhang, as a kind of leitmotif and a cross-cutting theme of my novel. And it is about an ant flying into the sky and swallowing the sun, and many other miracles that she leads. A barren woman giving birth to a son, a scorpion burrowing down to the nether realms, and the Shesh king bowing his head at its feet, and the housefly begetting a hawk, and Muktabai sees and laughs. So that is the kind of allegorical but miracle-making ability of everyone. If you have faith, if you dare, you can do it. And my characters in the novel, most of my characters are touched by that magic of Muktabai, to keep faith, to dare, to persevere, whether they succeed or not, and also face triumph and tragedy. But equally the men, some of the men characters, and in the larger stage of India, it is about how Mahatma Gandhi, Madan Mohan Malviya, Veer Savarkar, every one of those big heroes, even they were trying to dare. They were persevering despite failure, and they were trying to swallow the sun. And it seemed like that until we finally reached our goal. So it is the big theme of the ability of everyone and the potential of everyone to realize themselves.
Now you've dedicated this novel to your parents, to your mother, Malati Desai, and your father, B.G. Murdeshwar. How much of your real mother is in the fictional Malati that you have created?
Well, the Malati of my imagination is very similar to the Malati of my mother Malati. In spirit, in character, and in the kind of strength she always showed. But otherwise, their trajectories, they deviate after a point. there is some kernel of Malati and Malati's story, but after a point, it deviates. But my Malati of my imagination is the beating heart of this novel.
Absolutely.
And I've got such wonderful feedback from readers about how they love her, and also how she, from one stage to another, how she dares all the time to cross the boundaries, to cross the Lakshman Rekhas, whether it is this wrestling match with a much bigger boy in her class in school, or whether it is grappling with the dacoits, or whether it is taking on her classmates in Elphinstone College, intellectually battling, and then moving into Banaras, dealing with revolutionaries there, and then also resuming her law studies and, fighting one of the most epic, one would say, political trials as a lawyer, defending revolutionaries. So this trajectory of hers is meant to be also inspirational for all women and girls.
Speaking of inspiration, you spill the beans in your author's note, yet your father wrote 148 love letters to your mother. I mean, he was practically a one-man romance novel factory. So
it deserves a separate
How
novel,
did you stumble upon this treasure trove, and what made you feel that, hey, my dad's love letters could be the next great literary inspiration?
So I came across these letters in a tin trunk when we were moving from Delhi to Budapest. And then at that time, I found that these letters...
Mike.
1 minute.
So give us a flavor of this
Yes,
love letters,
yes.
please.
So I then just completely was blown away by these letters, because they captured so much of not only the emotions, but also the spirit of the times, the atmosphere, the even economic and political discourses that were going on. And of course, most of it was my father's letters. My mother was very brief in her replies, and he used to complain about that, we can make out from the letters. So let me read out. It was also about how I myself am very attracted to this medium. It is such a wonderful and complete vessel for communication of your feelings, and also
You
relationships.
mean letters as opposed to the email that we are
Letters,
using these
yes,
days?
email or WhatsApp.
Yes.
So I want to read out to you a passage. So alive were Guru's letters that they threatened to incarnate into Malati's alter ego, teasing her mind with riddles about the universe, dipping into her soul in contemplation, whispering confidences into her ears, serenading her unabashedly, touching her body with the feather of his words, giving advice when she was in a quandary, affirming her actions when she took adventurous decisions, sharing her disappointment at setbacks, and not allowing her to rue her mistakes. So this was during the time when they were separated, and she was in Banaras, and he was in Bombay. And then this is when this really remote relationship, this became a kind of connection, and that's how he communicated with her. And so there is this letter which I have used from the original, which I would like to read to you. And he says, "It is such a horrid torture for me to wait for a letter that never arrives, or which sluggishly arrives the next morning, if at all. A troubled day, a sleepless night, an anxious heart, an ailing body. That is all I gain, dear Malati. How can you be so superbly careless when I'm so punctiliously careful?
So actually, he would have loved WhatsApp because it's instantaneous and you get a blue tick as well.
But then what happens to the glorious
Yes,
waiting?
I agree. Yeah. Anyway, coming back to the novel, now Malati and Kamla, the two sisters, they are the first women in their family to attend college. So how does education play a role in shaping their perspective and empowering them to challenge societal norms?
Absolutely. This is the other driver of the novel's message on gender equality and women's empowerment, where Baba, the girl's father, puts a premium on education of the girls. And it's really one of those Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao stories, because those days, child marriage and child motherhood, and unfortunately still remains a problem which we must, and that is why the campaign. So he did not want his daughters, two of his daughters, to, after his wife's death, to really become, go into the same stream of child marriage and child motherhood. And he said that each one of the girls must, and not only for his daughters, he wanted it for everybody. And he was a campaigner, and he had been influenced by Maharishi Karve and others. And so there was a big campaign that he launched. He lost one Mahabharata on that, but later in this Aikeda, he wins that because he has learnt lessons from the first. So that education of girls is at the core of how these girls, make their way into ashram, the orphanage cum school, and then they move on to Elphinstone College, one of the first girls to finish their study, and then to study law.
Then to study law, exactly.
And then to go on to have a career, and then become a lawyer. So that whole trajectory is only that empowerment, the path to empowerment and escape from victimhood is what education. And then I quote both Annie Besant and Malviya ji as saying that this is education first. Correct. Because at that time, there was also this dilemma of whether you should be focusing on freedom fight, protesting, picketing, going into jail, or should you be finishing your... So the girls are in that dilemma, and they are told, no, you are women, you are getting this opportunity for the first time. You will also need this education because India will need educated women and men after freedom. So that angle is also there in education.
Now this word, you just used the word Lakshman Rekha in answer to the previous question. And I see the same word, Lakshman Rekha, figures at several places in this novel. So what were the Lakshman Rekhas for the women of India a century ago? And do you think some Lakshman Rekhas still exist for the modern Indian woman?
Well, one was, of course, the gendered roles and also lack of access to education. They were denied education, especially higher education, but even middle school or sometimes even primary education. The other Lakshman Rekhas were also, of course, relating to how they have a role as wives and mothers, that Vansha Vriddhi is their only duty, that they were the fifth caste. So, there were so many of these gender biases. And there was also the Lakshman Rekha of certain behavior within the family, within society, and whether they could actually go out into the workplace and behave. So many of those boundaries are sought to be, demolished in this book by the characters themselves. whether it is Malati and Kamla, whether it is Shaila in their school, and whether it is Sarla.
The actress,
and,
yes, the actress.
And,
yes.
and then the actress Veena. So she breaks all these, they break all these boundaries. Even Ambutai, the widow who then, comes back
Exactly.
to claim her child. So all of these characters are the boundary breakers, and it's also very much linked to the leap into the sky and swallowing the sun.
Well, in a way, you yourself have been a boundary breaker. You have broken many glass ceilings. You rose to the position of deputy head of UN Women. So tell me, did your professional experiences working in a women's organization, the premier women's organization in the world, influence your storytelling?
It did. I must admit, this is very much at the heart. It is very much a feminist novel, although it is not only that. As you said, it's a coming of age. It is very much about, inspired by the family saga. It's also a love story,
Yes.
an epic love story, I would say, in epic times. But it is very much in its character and in the drivers of the story. It's very much a feminist story. And that, of course, both inspired by my my upbringing and my own trajectory, but also equally by this experience of setting up the first global organization on gender equality and women's empowerment and building it up for 7 years. So that, of course, taught me not only that this cause is important, but that we have much work to do in terms of mindset change. And you really need to advocate and build movements, and nothing better, and that we found all across the world, nothing better to do that than to tell stories. Success stories, stories of oppression, provoke outrage, and then provide resolution. And also the good examples, who should not just be one swallow, that makes
A summer
the
does not make a swallow.
Yes.
Yes, a swallow does not a summer make.
That's
yes.
right. So that was very much there. And the UN experience overall, of course, which is very much in keeping with our own Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and our own universalist and humanist civilizational approach, that element of, every human being has the right to self-realization. That, and that the power of ideas to change the world. I think these are the things that I brought from the UN into writing this book. And of course, the deathless human spirit.
Yes.
That
Now-
must be affirmed.
Now you say this is a feminist novel, but the male characters are also very fascinating. Especially there is a passage of, in the book when Malati is internally conflicted between her feelings for Guru and for Shyam, which adds an extra layer, I think, of nuanced narrative. So tell me, how did you conceptualize these male characters in this exploration of love and relationships in, early colonial India?
So Guru particularly, but Shyam also in another way, they are the modern young men who are first time coming in touch with women classmates. So that's a very interesting chemistry at work. And I've tried to explore that. And her relationship with Shyam is based on love of sports and tennis. And he's her coach. And he's physically very attractive. And then her relationship with Guru is of a different kind. It begins with friendship and then flowers into love. And I have explored this something which is very intangible called love through both Guru, Shyam, and other characters in the book. But basically, what I have tried to do is to explore also the psyche of men at that time, whether older men, but also Guru, and who were conditioned in a patriarchal environment, and then they were evolving as empathetic women empowering men. So that's the transition I've tried to track. And Guru, to me, is a equally lovable character with all his flaws.
So you're going to read out a passage for us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would like to. So he, at one point, yes, so at one point, he says to, he proposes to Malati, and after that, he says to her that, you know, I'm your devotee. You are installed in the sanctorum of my temple, and I shall be forever your worshipper. And you are. So he elevates her. So, you know, that relationship of worshipper to goddess. And then later, when she feels at some point that he's failing, she confronts him. And this is what firstly Guru says when she accuses him of forgetting his promise. He says, it's you who can't see me. No, sorry. Just 1 minute. No, so he says that I have never failed you. You know, a devotee sometimes forgets to worship, but I have never failed you. But then she says, then this is no way to treat a goddess who is one not because you called her so, but because of who she is and what she has done for you. So, you know, that's the dynamics. And before that, he says, it's you who can't see me as your Lord, even though I see you as a goddess always. So, you know, this is that play of the Ardhanarishwar, you know, the ego of the man and the woman, and how this play of an evolved equilibrium of man-woman relationship is shown in Guru and Malati's relationship. Of course, Sham is then, you know, becomes secondary later, but this is certainly
picking up from this Ardhanarishwar reference, I find that there are many references to the two epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, in your narrative. So what inspired you to weave these cultural and religious elements into your narrative, and how do you believe they enhance the overall storytelling?
So, you know, the characters at that time, I mean, people at that time, I think even today, they lived and breathed. You know, they used to breathe the epics and use it in their everyday language of communication, of inspiration, of motivation. And so I have used that liberally, I admit. And one of the, you know, there are many interesting references, but even a 15, and it's across class, across gender and age, this kind of familiarity and attachment to and drawing inspiration from the epics and the Shastras as well. So this 15-year-old Surekha, as she is going to be married to an older man, and she's come to this palace where she's going to be living, she compares it to the Maya Danav's palace of illusions, which he built for the Pandavas. And she wonders whether she is going to, you know, walk over the mirrored floor and drown in the pond, in the pool of water, or hit her head against the sheer curtain that the illusion has been created on. So then, of course, philosophically, other characters also draw references to Bhagavad Gita. When their mother dies, Baba says to the girls, he quotes this Vasasi Jirnani Yatha Vihaya. So, and also later on, Margie uses it for Shella. So, the stoic approach to life. And most interestingly, I have also and done research and found references which are unorthodox and which try to make the feminist point. There is one reference where Sarla, the young girl who has just got married, complains to Malati and Kamla that my husband, he's not showing any emotion. So Malati and Kamla, joke with her and say, but you're not supposed to feel any passion. It's the men who are supposed to. So she says, who says that? And then she quotes Kautilya. And I discovered this and I was very happy about using it. It says, Kautilya says that women have double the appetite of men for food, 8 times the sexual desire, 6 times the courage, and twice the astuteness. So the girls don't believe her because she has the habit of, bluffing. So then she quotes the Sanskrit verse. So
and we always thought Kautilya only talked about economics.
It has to be, of course, woman economics.
No, you really, as I said, that was really an unorthodox reference that you picked up. But the novel, of course, has several fictional characters modeled on some real characters, but you also have real characters like Mahatma Gandhi in the novel, who's actually speaking. You have Annie Besant, you have Madan Mohan Malviya, who meets Malati at one point. So what kind of a research did you have to do to get under the skin of these real characters? Because, you cannot have Mahatma Gandhi speaking in a very different tone to what we are used to, from his writings.
Well, I have been a Mahatma Gandhi follower since my childhood. I've read his autobiography, every book. And also, I have been following the others that I have, Veer Savarkar, others, and Madan Mohan Malviya ji. Annie Besant, of course, every woman's, Indian woman's heroine. So it was easy, but I used them because they have also a narrative purpose. Quite apart from giving it a little bit of a, interest and name recognition value for readers, I wanted also to use them for a narrative purpose, as you saw, because Malati and Kamla meet Annie Besant in exalted Bombay company. They get to meet all these, the elite of Bombay society, and Jiddu Krishnamurti and Petit Jahangir. And later, when she decides to sacrifice her law studies and go to work in Banaras.
In Banaras, yes.
MMV, the Mahila Mahavidyalaya, has just been opened by Annie Besant and Madan Mohan Malviya, and she goes there. So, there is, and she gets this epiphany that Annie Besant is calling her. So there are these, narrative purposes that some of these, and her meeting with Mahatma Gandhi, Madan Mohan Malviya later on, all of them. But also, I think it's wonderful to bring in flesh and blood some of these great people who need to be remembered.
When you are talking about that period of Indian history, you cannot but not bring in these characters.
Absolutely.
So I also found that the novel is very cinematic, in the sense it opens with this fantastic wrestling match between Malati and this boy called Bhika. It sets the tone, so to speak. And then there are several very memorable scenes, like, the vivid descriptions of princely India, the encounter with the dacoits, there's a seance, there's the Bombay film industry, there's the whole Anglo scene in Shimla, the patriotic fervor in the BHU, and the whole trial of Mohan Kaka. So have any of the streaming platforms already shown interest in this novel?
Yes, yes. In fact, even before it was published, I was in touch with some of these platforms. And I would very much like that to happen. I agree with you that there's immense potential for it to be, in fact, I calculate that it's about 32, at least 32
so
episodes.
3 seasons done.
3 seasons at least, and I have 270,000
Right.
original.
Yes, exactly. And who will be your choice? Who will be your choice to play Malati?
But so if I can just first finish that point, that I would like that to happen, but I also want this to have its own literary journey. And I think you advised me,
I can tell you, the film will not come out immediately, so the journey can be completed.
I remember
quite
checking
easily.
with you, and you advised me that first let the book come out and don't,
So
go in
who's your
further.
choice for playing Malati?
So I would like to do a poll of the readers. And, it has to be more, of course, some little bit about the appearance, because she has a very particular appearance, and I have emphasized that. But also, it is about the spirit and that aura that she has to emit. So yes, I think we will be doing a poll of who should play Malati.
Okay, there's also a lot of poetry in the novel. In fact, much of which has been translated by you into English in full rhyme, which must have been a very, very difficult task. So what challenges did you face in this process of translation to preserve the poetic elements which you are borrowing actually from another language?
Yes, this poetry was one of the, for me, it was the soul of this novel. All the poetry that I have used. And many people have now, readers have come back to say that about the musicality of the prose in this book, in this novel. And that derives from the kind of poetry I've used, but also how it infuses into the prose. Yes, it has been a challenge to translate from Marathi, which is a very rich language. And why I used Marathi poetry was that from my childhood, my father used to, every evening, I still have that notebook of his where his favorite poems were written. He used to recite to us every evening these poems, and I have used them. And on the first page of the book, if you see, his handwritten poem
right,
of Balkavi, Prem Lake, is there. So I would like, if, with your permission, because again, poetry highlights emotions. It brings a certain lyrical character to this. And I must thank David Davidar of Aleph for being more lenient with me than some other earlier publishers, potential publishers were. And he appreciated, in fact. And I think it is, in my view, it's something that is very dear to me. So let me read some translation and then a poem which I myself originally. Just quickly. So there is one poem that he recites, which is the pond eager to meet the ocean. And it is about, he recites it, Guru recites it on their nuptial night. So she asks him, why? Why is such a poem about unfulfilled desire to be recited on this day? But he said, to remember that we may not have got here and that we would, to cherish what we have got. So he says, and I'll say it a little bit in Marathi and then. एकत्र गुंफून जीवित धावे प्रीतीचे नर्तन नाचलो मागे एकटा उभा मी येथे भोवती शोधी प्रियते. So thank you. Pulsating with life, intertwined we once flowed, the gift of the dance of love once bestowed. A solitary pond, muddied and parched now I stand, searching for my beloved in this wasteland, eager to join my soulmate in vain, surrounded by sand, waiting for rain, so that I can swell with water and course through it fast, to be one with my true love, the ocean vast.
Incredible. So I think we have just about 4 minutes and 40 seconds left. So if, with your permission, let's open it up to the audience if there are any questions. So anyone wants to ask? Yes, the lady in the front.
It was a wonderful experience hearing you, Lakshminji. I'm so glad you are a feminist, so am I a feminist. And I have worked for women's emancipation and gender equality in Rajasthan for the last 50 years. I find that gender equality we have still not achieved. How do you think can women achieve gender equality? And if they do get into jobs, etc., and want to reach to the top, they are sexually exploited too. So what is the way out of this?
Well, I think all women's empowerment issues are an unfinished business. But what is really important today is that they are being recognized as issues and problems that need to be addressed. And not only that, there is now a movement both at the ground level, but also at the governmental and policy level to address these issues, laws, policies, and also, in the workplace, in the corporate world, all the places where there are issues of sexual harassment. Now there are, it's the kind of awakening that has never happened before. And that is the first beginning, it's the beginning of change and beginning of addressing and beginning of, but it's not only the beginning, it's now progressed. We are talking about women-led development. We are talking about women-led worship. So many areas now.
Any other question? Okay, the lady there.
Ratio of men and women in
question.
every job.
Please be brief.
It's a huge thing.
So my question is, I'm Manju Pabuwal. Namaste Lakshmi ji. So my question is, how do you compare virtues like patience, tolerance, sacrifice in relation to the so-called feminist characters like being audacious, bold, reacting, impulsive and whatnot? Thank you.
In fact, that's a very good question, and I've addressed it in the novel. I would encourage you to read it, because Sarla, one of my characters, she protests against any labeling of certain characteristics as feminine and certain characteristics as masculine. And that's my whole concept of Atmanirbhar, Ardhanarishwar. So I don't think that you can, only men, for example, Guru in the novel is as sensitive and as empathetic also sacrificing, as for example, Malati cares to be. And Malati protests against the play that she goes to see, where they show a self-sacrificing woman and says, why should women be the ones to sacrifice? So I think we have to break the barriers of what is feminist concept of this, or the misogynist concept of what women should be. It has to be a kind of intermeshing of the two. Everyone can be sensitive, empathetic.
Before we close, my last question, what can we expect from you next?
Oh. I think maybe a sequel.
Yeah, because
which
you
I
have
had
already 3
originally-
generations, so yes, so it's a
Maybe
trilogy.
sequel, but also I had started a collection of short stories based on my experiences in the UN. So that will be more international as well.
Excellent. Well, we have run out of time.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Ambassador Lakshmi Puri.